Kurt, what a week in playoffs. Are you kidding me? Let's jump right into the NBA news. Breaking news as of today. Danny Ainge is retiring. He's been with the organization, the Boston Celtics, since 2003. And Brad Stevens, the head coach, is now transitioning into president of basketball operations. What's your thought on this move, and what does this mean for the Celtics moving forward in the offseason?
I think it might have been time for a transition. I mean, that there's kind of been a talent drain over there. Danny Ainge has done a fantastic job. Obviously, he won a title. He's the guy who got Tatum, who got Brown, who has driven a lot of trades and moves, Marcus Smart, that have really worked for them short-term and long-term. Like he has been a fantastic steward of the franchise. But you look at the talent drain over the last few years with Gordon Hayward leaving and just getting the trade exception, and Kyrie leaving, and just not, you bring in Kemba, but that's not really working all that well. It just felt like it might be time for a new voice and some changes there. Brad Stevens brings that. They still got Mike Zarin, who's been there forever as the assistant. Like what I really like for this for Boston, I don't know about you, it's going to be a smooth transition. Like they've got to go get a coach and whatever, but smart organizations plan for these transitions, right? It's not just random.
Yeah, the succession planning is key for any continuity. And you're right, like Brad Stevens, he knows what it means to be a Celtic. He knows how the organization's run. So being able to fill that space still gives you continuity, but allows you to have a new voice, which I think is clutch for any of those championship caliber organizations, right? I think they understand how do you keep Celtic DNA, but still innovate.
Yeah, and they've got hard decisions coming up. They've got, do you re-sign Evan Fournier? I think they're going to test the trade market for Kemba Walker, but he's got 2 years left on a max and bad knees, so good luck. And it's clearly a roster we saw this year. It's a little tough to judge because of the injuries, but they're not on the level of the Bucks and the Nets, right? And if they're going to get there, they've got to make some moves. A lot falls on Brad Stevens this offseason.
What's so interesting to me, because when you look at the Celtics' performance for the past 4 years, 3 of those years they went to the Eastern Conference Finals. And think about who was on that roster. Keep changing it out. Gordon Hayward, Kyrie, Jason, Kemba, Jalen. They've had different stars kind of take them there. And when we talk about them underperforming, we keep saying the Boston Celtics should be better. Last year they were in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Heat, right? That's what's so crazy about this team is we expect them to be in the finals playing for a championship. And anything less than that is not enough. And it's like this is the first time in 4 years that they got knocked out in the first round of the playoffs, and we're just completely dumbfounded. I think that kind of level of standard is really a compliment to what the Celtics have done. But you're right. How do you get that little bit of like alchemy to take them from Eastern Conference Finals to the finals and have a chance to beat, a Lakers or the Suns or whoever else, the Utah Jazz? And I think you're right. I think they have to address that starting core of Kemba Walker, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown. You have 2 All-Stars. Kemba was finally healthy for a little bit, but then missed 29 games finally, at the end of this season, and he missed the last 2 playoff games. Like who's your guys? Who are you banking on? So I think in my mind, you just go with Tatum, you double down on him, and then make the necessary adjustments from there.
Yeah, and they've also part of that core, Marcus Smart, right? Who's just, I think, an emotional key for them, a key defensively. And by the way, next year is the final year of his contract. You're going to have to pay to keep him, and money will come into this at some point. Again, you're paying Kemba so much money back into that contract.
2 years, $73 million.
Yeah, so with that kind of finances, it's going to be tough. They're going to have to figure out, again, how their core is and how they want to build it. But you mentioned it, that little step from verge of contending to genuinely being a contender that can win it all. A lot of GMs will tell you that's actually like the hardest step to take, that last step, because it's just fine-tuning details, but you can't miss on one. And you have to find your Jay Crowders, your guys who can come in and just make those kind of plays.
Your Andre Iguodala's, right? Yeah. You got to find those kind of guys, and we obviously know one in Marcus Smart. And the question was, Evan Fournier, could he be that guy? It wasn't enough this time, and obviously there were other issues too with Jalen and Kemba being.
They need a center too.
Tatum, like, save us, give a 50-point performance every night, and give us a chance to win.
And they need a center, right? I think they need to. Is Robert Williams is the Time Lord the future there? I like him too, but is that the future? Or where are you going to double down there? There's some decisions to make in Boston.
Yeah, let's move over to another Eastern Conference team. Let's talk about the Sixers and the Wizards. So it looked like the Sixers had the whole series buttoned up 3-0, and then Washington said, "Not today, not in our house." Won the game at home, to force a game 5. What's your thoughts on the series? Joel Embiid left at the end of the first quarter there with right knee soreness, and he's doubtful for game 5.
Yeah, that's the story in this series, isn't it? Like it, the Sixers may even win this, should be able to win this, frankly, be able to close this out without Joel Embiid. They kind of almost did it on the road. They should be able to at home. That said, their future in these playoffs hinge on Joel Embiid's knee. Like, he's not just got to be good. He's got to be dominant for them to have a shot at whoever comes out of Brooklyn and Milwaukee. And by the way, they're going to need him possibly to get by a pretty good Atlanta team, right? Like, assuming Atlanta knocks off the Knicks, that's not an easy round. Look, he is the best permanent player, he was the most dominant player in the league this year when he was healthy. That's the guy they got to have. And so, yeah, there's Joel Embiid watch right now, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, that series, it's only a matter of time before Washington loses that series, So, like, you're right. This is thinking about round 2, round 3, round 4, right? And Joel, it's interesting because like you said, when he's on the floor, unstoppable. But what I've loved about that series is not necessarily Joel's dominance, but Tobias Harris and Ben Simmons. Tobias Harris has just been sensational. And I love Tobias. I've lobbied for Tobias on this show many times. I like him a lot. And being able to close games, take over games when he needs to. I love the way he's a 1-2 punch with Simmons. So yeah, I love that aspect of it. It's not as lethal as Brooklyn's, where it's like, okay, James Harden might go for a 40-point triple-double. Like anything could happen with that team. It's not like that yet. But I think obviously when you get later, you're going to need Embiid's consistency because no one can stop him. He can do everything. Watching him play, Kurt, it's just a masterclass in basketball. Yeah. It's just his skill set is truly unbelievable, and it's just unbelievable. It's like, how do you combine like Hakeem Olajuwon, Tim Duncan, like Shaq? It's just an unbelievable skill set.
And we end up talking about even like his missed dunks for 5 minutes, right? Like he misses one and bounces around. We're like, what a missed dunk. It's Tobias Harris, though, becomes critical again, I think, as you start to move next round and beyond, especially because, all right, I'm going to pack the paint on Embiid. I'm going to throw different bodies at him. Well, now you need those other shot creators. You need those guys to step up, and that's where Tobias Harris comes in. Tobias Harris is the ball. I mean, Ben Simmons in transition, but it's Tobias in the half court who's the creator and the pick and roll initiator, and he's going to have to be fantastic the next couple of rounds for them to advance.
Other 2 things to watch out for that series is Ben Simmons with free throws.
Yeah,
as we know, hack of Ben Simmons might become the play for the rest of the playoffs that could get them in a lot of trouble. And the other thing is those young rookies, particularly Maxey. You got to love the way that they have been getting a ton of playing time, which can only bolster confidence because you're going to need those guys late in this playoff run. There's going to be a time when Maxey's number gets called or there's foul trouble or something, and he's going to have to make a play. And those guys, they're getting so much confidence, which is just great for that team.
Yeah, and I'll shout out my guy too. I'm a Matisse Thybulle fan through, man, because he brings that defense, and that's a guy you're gonna. Hey, man, next round I'm gonna throw him on Trae Young. If we get beyond that, I can bring him in for stretches and be confident when I throw him on James Harden or Kyrie Irving. That kind of defensive versatility for a second-year player is unbelievable. As his shot comes along, he's going to be a big part of what they do down the line.
Moving over to the Western Conference now, let's talk about a team that you've got to see in person, the Clippers, playing against Luka Doncic and the Mavericks. The Clippers had an unbelievable performance recently where Kawhi is just a machine.
Yeah. Evening
up the series at 2-2. Luka has a neck strain. What are your thoughts on this series? What was it like being there in person? And what can you expect from this matchup in Game 5?
There was great energy in person. It was so much fun. The game I was at, I was in Los Angeles. Luka in person, when Luka is on, is just one of the great joys of basketball. He is so much fun to watch. He just picks you apart with his shot, his ability to take in a little bit of contact and still get his shot up, his ability to just see the floor and make passes that, maybe LeBron can make and a couple other guys, but there's just not. He is such the total package. It was fun to watch, but then they get to Dallas, and 2 things happened, really. A, Dallas was unsustainably hot from 3. They shot over 50%, for the first 2 games. Well, 50% from 3 and another one in the third, but they were just not missing. That's not, nobody, not even Steph Curry and Trae Young, nobody's hitting that level forever. The role players, came back to earth. The other thing was, and I love this about Ty Lue, he got a little desperate. He started trying different lineups. went with the small ball. Nicholas Batum and Marcus Morris are your big men. Dallas does not have an answer for it. And what you've got to love about Ty Lue, going back to his days in Cleveland, if he finds a play that works, a matchup that works, a lineup that works, he will use it relentlessly. He will, until you stop it, until you can beat it, he's going to roll it out there. You will see it again in Game 5. He will not stop using what works until you can stop it and prove you can do it consistently. And Dallas can't, and I'm not sure they have the personnel to really match up with the Clippers small ball.
Yeah, I mean, Porzingis has had some nice games taking advantage of his size, but you're right. Like as far as kind of stopping Ty Lue's matchups that he keeps sending out there, they have not had an answer. Luka Doncic had 30-point triple doubles almost every game, except for the most recent game. He had 19, 6, and 6, which was it's uncharacteristic for Dallas's superstar. They end up getting blown out in that performance. Do you think he'll be able to get back to those 30-point? Because like you said, when the role players aren't shooting, they were shooting 19% from the three-point line, right? Or when they're shooting at that rate, you need Luka to come up with something, that Luka magic. Do you think he'll be able to get his team back in contention in Game 5?
I really, it depends on how that neck is, right? Like how there was a point in that last game where he saw a pass that basically he can make, LeBron can make. There's a couple guys, but you're on the right wing and you see a guy in the left corner and you can literally whip the ball, across to the guy in the corner, right in the shooting pocket. And it's a hard pass to make. He made the pass. I mean, he got it there. I think they missed a shot. I don't remember. But if you watch him, he made the pass and then he winced and he shook his arm out. And it's like, it's clearly bothering him and slowing him just enough. And in this series, you said they need 100% Luka, right? Because Kawhi Leonard has been, unbelievable. The Clippers have found their rhythm. Paul George has been great. As the Clippers start to gain confidence and believe in themselves and roll, you need every bit of Luka to make this work. And we'll see if he's physically up to that.
Yeah, and sorry, excuse me. They only shot Dallas only shot 5 for 30 from three, so that's 16.7%, not even 19% from three. But the thing, like you said, the Dallas Luka had an unbelievable series last year in the bubble, and they still lost. Which reminds me of another team whose superstar had an unbelievable performance, 55-point performance, hitting 12 threes, the playoff record. Damian Lillard, and they still came up short 7 points in double overtime against the Denver Nuggets. What does Portland need to do to win in Game 6?
Get Lillard some help. First off, we just got to stop for a second. That was one of the most unbelievable playoff performances of not only of this season, but in a long time. That was an unstoppable, unbelievable, like just threes to force overtime when you knew he was going to take them. Everyone in the building knew he was going to take them. They can't stop him. Everything.
I mean, he was shooting 70% from field, Kurt, and 70% from the three-point line.
Yeah, it just the problem was, he's knocking down a record 12 threes in this game, but in overtime, he's got 17 points on 8 shots, and the rest of the team has 2 points on 14 shots. Like somebody else has got it. CJ can't step out of bed. Like everybody's got to they've got to get some other help somewhere. It's somebody else has to knock down clutch shots in big moments. They're not getting a lot of stops. They can survive this series that way because Denver's not getting a lot of stops. This is a bet the over series wherever you're at, man. But it's been, and that makes it entertaining. Honestly, it's been one of my favorite series to watch because it's just up and down, back and forth. But if Portland's going to win, they're just going to have to get more than Lillard in key moments.
And Nurkic, he had 4 fouls in the third quarter. You think about his impact. He was going toe-to-toe with Nikola Jokic for most of that game until he got foul trouble. Then Kanter had to come in. And that's not even to mention the beginning of the game when the Nuggets went on 20 points in the second quarter. You saw like this unbelievable swing that you're talking about where the Blazers are so much fun to watch, but they put themselves in these holes where they have to have Damian Lillard score 55 points and shoot 70% from the floor and from the three to give them a chance to win, And then even then, they end up losing in double overtime. That is my problem with this Blazers team, where phenomenal to watch, but just don't make it so hard.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason to make it that hard. You have an unbelievable leader in Damian Lillard on the floor. Like he's doing things that are just like you said, it's incredible. But just don't put yourself in a 20-point hole. Like,
Yeah, and they've come out. They've done this all season. They've just come out for flat stretches and dug holes and climbed back out of them. And part of that is just when your defense isn't good or isn't consistent, at least, you end up in these problems, right? Like you put yourself in trouble, and your offense has got to bail you out. They just have an offense that can actually do it, so it makes it makes it an entertaining series. I'm rooting for this series to go 7. Not if I care who wins, man. I just want a 7th game.
As a fan, we want them to play 7 games, but in reality, Denver will probably win it next. But I will say though, Kurt, just here's a hot take for you. To me, Damian Lillard is very similar to Russell Wilson, right? Where like it's almost like let's stack the deck against both of these superstars and make them win the game for us every night. You know, it's unbelievable his ability to perform in clutch time and his ability to just will things to happen. But like I said, it reminds me a lot of Russell and the Seahawks. Let's just not make it that hard, you know.
Is that just something about the Northwest, man? They make it
hard. Maybe it is. That's a great point. Maybe it is. We got to have a conversation with that. I don't know. But one team that has no doubt about where they stand and as far as a team is concerned, has more weapons than anyone in the NBA is Brooklyn. Yeah. I mean, and you have Kyrie Irving, who's just the 9th player in NBA history to join the 50-40-90 club. And you have Kevin Durant, who, as we know, is just one of the baddest men to ever hold a basketball. And you have James Harden, who is just this shapeshifter. He can have a 30-point triple-double. He can have 18 assists in a playoff game. They're going against the back-to-back MVP in what is going to be in Milwaukee, Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks, which is going to be probably one of the biggest heavyweight matchups that we've seen all season long. What's your take on this Bucks-Nets series?
Yeah, this is the second round series I've been most like when it was finally set and you looked at the tournament bracket, you're like, ooh, that one. That's the one that's going to be a heavyweight battle. Because the Bucks answered a lot of questions in the first round, didn't they? They came out against their, Miami that knocked them out last year and said, hey, Drew Holiday makes a real difference. Remember, we got him for the playoffs. Look how much he helps our defense, settles our offense, hits threes. Chris Middleton was fantastic. They were knocking down the threes. So when the wall was built in front of Giannis, they just shot over the top of it as a team and made them pay. That was a fantastic Bucks team. And I don't know that they're certainly, you just mentioned, they're not more talented than the Nets, right? The Nets, they match up. No one is. And they match up. It's an interesting matchup. They've got long athletic defenders. They've got, the ability to make this a series. And we haven't seen the Nets tested yet. They won the first round, but we haven't seen them in a series of close, tight, intense games with adjustments. And all right, we've got to do this. I mean, we keep looking at that roster thinking they'll be fine because, we'll just go with Kyrie this game, right? Or whatever, when Joe Harris is good, it's Joe Harris night. And whatever it is, that's going to be tough to match up with. But Brooklyn may be able, Milwaukee may be able to get enough stops. I think this is a 6-7 game bruiser of a series that's going to be so much fun, and the chess match is going to be so much fun.
Yeah, I think I think the Bucks take the edge, but I think that the biggest issue though for me is like mismatches, like on switches. Like, what do you do? Chris Middleton might be able to match up against KD, but James Harden, if you have a switch or Kyrie Irving on a switch, Giannis versus Kyrie, or think about anyone in that starting 5 lineup. Like, how in the world do you play in that high pick and roll offense? Do you see them starting to hit off with Claxton as well in this high pick, Blake Griffin? I think Brooklyn is starting to find themselves. But the thing about Milwaukee that I love is that they know who they are, and they are excellent in fast break and transition points. And the Boston Celtics were not, right? So the Boston Celtics, it was like, let's set up and give Jason Tatum the ball and have him save us, right? That's not going to be how this series plays out. And when you talk about fast break points, Giannis and fast break, Giannis, Kawhi, LeBron, there's probably those are they're probably the best in fast break in the game. That's going to be a huge problem for Brooklyn, in my personal opinion. So I'm excited to see that. But I think the biggest X factor has to be James Harden, because you don't know if he's going to score 40, or you don't know if he's going to have a triple double. You don't know if he's going to get Joe Harris those 7 threes. You just don't know.
He's so critical to what they do as a facilitator, because you're right, he can score. Look, if we end up needing him to score, they can use him to score. but they can also, like you say, you can have 18 assists and 15 points and still make their offense hum and flow because he's just finding the right guys. I think you started to touch on the other thing I think is fascinating in this series. The preferred defense for the Nets, right? For the Bucks, is to have Brook Lopez drop into the paint, be a big man, just take away your drives, take away the easy buckets at the paint. I don't know that Brooklyn can pull him out, right? Like, can Blake Griffin do that? Jeff Green is slowed by injury. We're not going to know till next week. I think he's critical in the series. He's their best 5-man lineups when the limited time we got to see them, all together, were with Jeff Green as the 5 because he can switch defensively, plays good on that end, but also can score inside or space the floor better than Blake Griffin can. He's just more athletic at this point than Blake Griffin is. It's gonna be interesting to see if they can do that, or if Brook Lopez can take over the paint and make it tough to drive, then that's just a big plus for the Bucks.
And they're so long, like you're talking about. Like, one of the issues we saw at the Celtics is that you can't overcommit, right? Because you have KD on the 3-point line. When Kyrie drives, you can't come help. But with Chris Middleton, Lopez, Giannis, Drew Holiday, these guys are so long, they're so athletic that I think you might be able to see more people cheat and be able to still cover their guys. So yeah, this is going to be a chess match to say the least. Yeah. But I think the Bucks might surprise some people.
I'm probably going to take the Nets, but just by a whisper. Like I said, I think it's a 6 or 7 game series. This is a grab the popcorn, or better yet, you pop open the beer, sit on the couch, put the feet up series. This is going to be entertaining, start to finish.
Maybe not as entertaining as that double overtime thriller in Portland,
maybe not that.
but we'll see. Last but not least, let's talk about the fans. There's been a lot of issues with fans relating to players very negatively in these stadiums. Fans being arrested for throwing popcorn or running onto the court or spitting. There's people been banned for life. What's your take on fans coming back to the arena and all the recent issues and incidents that we've seen directed towards the players?
First, just on a broad concept, just having fans back in the arena has been so great. I think it's been great for the broadcasts. First off, it's fun to watch Madison Square Garden when it's full, right? Like, and they're screaming. But even in person, it's like when you go to games this season, and when the stadium was empty, and your team was down the team's down 2, they go on an 8-0 run that gets punctuated by a dunk at the end. The bench is going wild. They're high-fiving, and the energy just dissipates because there was no fans to carry it over in the building, right? Like, when they came out of the timeout, it was just back to a quietish building. It just wasn't the same. The fans there energize those players, keep that buzz going. It just feels different in the arena. It's been fantastic. And it's just great to have them back. And then there are those handful of idiots. And I want to have some brilliant, insightful take on this other than just stop being an idiot. But I don't know. I really don't know what it is. We could have a sociological discussion about people being pent up for after a year and then not handling being in public, or a breakdown of societal norms. I mean, we could discuss all that, but I sometimes I think it's just idiots being idiots, and sometimes it builds on each other. Like, hey, that guy did it. So I don't know. I wish I had a better take than that.
Yeah, let me give a stab at it. I think we're in an age where athletes are more than an athlete. Right? I'm a business person. I'm an activist. I'm a role model. But they're also reaching this point where I'm a vulnerable human being. And in an industry where the alpha is the one who rules the jungle, if you will, where weakness could cost you a contract, vulnerability could cost you a job. People have not been vulnerable. It's not been in vogue. But this past few years with DeMar DeRozan, Kevin Love, you start seeing more people being open about mental health and depression and doubt. So it's almost like we're watching these superstar athletes reckoning with their humanity, their mortality, and their vulnerability on the biggest stage, like in real life, like in real time. So they're trying to make sense of it. Kyrie's taking mental health breaks. Naomi Osaka's withdrawing from the French Open. Premier League players are talking about the abuse that they're receiving on social media. We're seeing all this happen in real time. And it's fascinating for me to see because the players are making that adjustment of how do I be a vulnerable human being, but still be at the top of my game and still be a role model for other people. That's a lot to deal with. the fans, I think, too, need to recognize that and then make an adjustment too, because they're now shifting. What it means to be a fan is shifting, just like what it means to be an athlete is shifting. So I think that it's going to take time for fans to kind of like take this new step and understand their relationship with athletes and with sports are changing, that you could have passion, but you have to also understand that these are vulnerable human beings, and that there are accountabilities for actions or messages you send on social media, or letters you mail, or things you say, or things you do. So I think that's just going to take time. But I think it's really, really fascinating to see that juxtaposition of both those, groups, both reckoning with how do I be vulnerable, but also be great at my craft.
That is a really nuanced, great take. That is really well. I love that. I love the way you're putting that, and I think your point that there needs to be accountability from fans is part of that. Like, you've seen these guys, people be arrested, their names are out there, they've been banned from the arenas. I think that that's a start. I think that when fans do cross the line, and you have to take that step as an organization, as an arena, to keep it civil for everyone else. And hopefully we can take steps down that road.